Rana Munoz,
Here.
Gary Camp, Paul Cervantes,
Here.
Jared Murtis,
Present.
and Mike Wanzer.
Here.
Quorum established. So if nobody, just a quick reminder, if you're not speaking, just please put yourself on mute so we don't get any feedback issues. Thank you. Chairman?
We're going to have to review the meeting minutes from the past meeting.
I move we accept the minutes as written.
This is Jared Murtis. I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can you scroll down on the agenda?
Sure.
Right. We are on item number 5. Discussion of possible action regarding the Construction Trade Advisory and Appeal Board 2020 Annual Report.
Did we skip 4?
No,
Oh, that's where it was 4?
we're at 5.
Oh, 5, sorry. Okay. So the absences, that was just none, did we just skip?
Yeah.
Can you scroll down on the agenda? Perfect. Item number, number 4 would be the items that we need to discuss for goals and objectives for 2021.
This is Jared Murtis, Ram. I read that, and to the best of my knowledge, I think that addressed everything that we discussed last time that I recall. So that's all I have to add about that.
So we do need an action on this item.
Mike Wanzer, I move that we accept it as written there.
Paul Cervantes, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Can you scroll back up to agenda item number 6?
It's discussion and possible action regarding the draft ordinance amending section 14206 of the Corpus Christi Code to amend the Construction Trade Advisory and Appeals Board member composition. And this is the draft.
This is Jared Murtis. I reviewed this before the meeting, and I think the only part of this draft that is not in line with our last discussion was the need or the potential need of involving vendors, either people that sell general construction products to plumbing or HVAC or electrical systems, just to make sure. We had some discussion last time about how a lot of those supply houses are not aware of the products they need to be supplying the code requirements, and that finding somebody that would kind of champion communicating with that sector of the community we thought was necessary. And I don't see how this addresses that necessarily, or maybe there's not a way that we can. That's the only thing I think is missing from this.
This is Luke Fry, and I would like to also add that I was hoping that we could get someone from AEP on the board, which is the electrical service provider. And maybe not even on the board, but someone who's just, I forgot the term, but I think it's ad officio or something like that.
Mr. Fry, we have always had on the electrical advisory board for all the years I was on it, and I think decades before I was there, always had the utility represented. We've had different members of AEP in that position and was very valuable. I think that is a wonderful thing to require.
Okay, good. And I know we have Buck Bryce on the line, who's our city attorney. And I don't know if he can contribute to this at all, or if he can, and not to put you on the spot, Buck, but I don't know if you can answer that question, or if that's something we need to have reviewed, or how that happens.
I think the ex-officio is probably your best mechanism to get the AEP guy on there. That way he can come and go. That way he doesn't need to come to meetings that don't involve electrical stuff.
Okay. Very good.
And as far as, I guess for the Jared's comment, you could add another category to the general contractor to maybe construction material vendor. Does that sound accurate?
You know, I guess what we're struggling with here is we used to have different boards. So the boards themselves were more laser focused on the disciplines, so electrical or mechanical, which was plumbing and HVAC. So when we had vendors that supplied products, it was in that industry. So the current makeup of this board is so broad that it is a little complex, because we can't really accomplish what we used to. The other option that we have, and my thought process is similar to the like a representative of the utility and representatives of the supply houses. Is it possible for us, when we're doing code adoption or discussing things, especially invite certain members to participate on the board? But they would be board members, so how would they communicate? Just some open discussion I wanted to talk about, since we're here talking about solving problems, if that makes sense.
This is just my perspective. I think you don't necessarily need to make them board members to get them involved. I think you can always, it's a public meeting, so you can always invite them and encourage them to come and participate and engage in your dialogue, in your board's dialogue.
Okay. Well, then maybe the solution of the board makeup then is when, and Ram, this is something that we're going to need help from you as the president and from city staff, is that when we have topics that may need input from of those special individuals, that we outreach with adequate time for them to be present and part of the meeting. I know the supply houses, as I discussed before, a lot of supply houses are not up to speed on codes, and I'm concerned about product being supplied. Now we can deal with that with the 21 code adoption, i.e. review and do outreach with that instead of having them here at every single meeting. So what do you think about that, Ram?
I'm thinking we are going to have to reach out every time we have a topic.
Yeah.
Whether it's me, you, or somebody else in that particular subject area, has to call and try to make sure they come in. The other option you can do is here on the membership, instead of saying a contractor, you can put a slash and say supplier. And that way you could have somebody from the plumbing supply, area or HVAC electrical show up as a representative. And I think you can do that to electrical, plumbing, and HVAC contractors. That way you can get a mixture. I mean, you still have your master electricians and plumbers and HVAC guys, but you'll have the opportunity to commingle somebody else in there.
I think that makes
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that makes sense structurally, because that allows us to make modifications into the future with who that is. And then I think, since each one of us is connected to our discipline, it may be up to the board, maybe some of the members, like for instance, me, on like engineering side and HVAC plumbing, talking to electricians, different spots or something. And maybe if we have a topic, I can make some phone calls and say, hey, I can get someone to help contribute. So maybe it does two ways, change the wording like that, and then just special request as needed from there. So I think it makes sense.
So our consensus is that we need to have the language, altered here where it says contractor for electrical, plumbing, and HVAC to also allow a slash for supplier.
Yes, sir.
Or we could add either or. You could have either, the technician or the supplier, one or the other.
I think you need to keep the master electrician and master plumber
I agree
and your
with that.
HVAC tech.
I agree. We need to keep them.
It would just be your plumbing contractor and your electrical contractor and HVAC contractor that can interchange in that same, trade.
Would construction material supplier be too broad?
Well, I think that actually makes sense. And let me tell you why. This is Jared. What is happening in the industry is you have a mixture of what the Department of Energy is doing versus the ICODE energy chapter. Okay. And so what's happening in the HVAC world, in refrigeration systems to air conditioning system, pumps and whatnot, the Department of Energy is requiring manufacturers to build equipment. So it doesn't matter what the vendors and contractors want to do, they can no longer sell product. Okay, so I think that we're getting a lot of strength in the HVAC world, but and maybe the lighting world, I think the general construction world is our most deficient area. So I think it does make sense for more general construction outreach.
Barry, this is Mike Wander. I think what you're saying is true on the bigger stuff like the equipment, but what I see a lot of in HVAC is the accessories and the supplies and the materials that don't really meet our specific code for whatever reason.
Okay.
I think the government is forcing us, not to buy, where we can't really buy the wrong equipment, but they're certainly peddling a lot of the wrong supplies.
Brand, this is Paul Cervantes. I recently came off the electrical advisory board and did have a local vendor, and we did have somebody from AEP, and it was kind of beneficial for us because they kind of worked hand in hand, and it was good for us to get up with the latest changes because AEP has their own rules and guidelines that they don't tell the city and they don't tell us until
Right. And Mr. Cervantes, the issue we have with the boards being consolidated is that it's like, if you look at back some of the meetings you've had already, some of them are not related to anything that was construction trades. They were, freeboard, they were windstorm, there were other types of things and stuff. So because of the nature of the board, if we have that many members that may not contribute at all with an entire annual cycle.
Correct.
So that's what we're struggling with is looking at the topics at hand. And then, like, for instance, we're going to be going through the 21 ICODE adoption here. At some point this year, the city will bring that to us to consider and look at this and local ordinances and such. And when we're doing that, it's kind of like a special project. And what we may have to do is invite people that are part of that within that window. And instead of having the laser discipline, a lot of people that are, if the utility representative was in our meetings most of the year, they probably would be, bored.
Correct. Or beneficial to what we're trying to accomplish.
Right. So we may need to just be more active in determining who we need to be including in special meetings throughout our annual cycle. And I guess it's going to take more active. Us as board members have to be more active in making that happen.
Yes.
So this is Luke Fry. The question I have is, how many ex-officio members can we have, and should the supplier be an ex-officio member?
Again, I'll add, so being an ex officio member, all that means is you have a right to speak during the meeting, but the board can always grant someone the right to speak during a meeting. So there's not a real need to add more ex officio members. You can add as many ex officio members as you would like, but there's no, the only benefit of that is it entitles them the right to speak during the meeting, which.
Okay, and we can grant that authority at any meeting if we invite somebody, is my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay, so then really, we wouldn't have to update the language that we're seeing here right now. Am I understanding that correctly?
Except for I believe they want the membership to be expanded for the material vendor.
Well, and that's my question. I think it makes sense to have somebody on the board, but at the same time, if we invite them and we can give them the authority to speak, then is it necessary? I guess is my question and this is to everybody on the board.
I think this is Jared, Mr. Fry. I think I do understand what you're saying. It's, the board makeup may need to stay the way that it is here, but we're all understanding that we do need to outreach to special individuals on special meetings, and then at the meeting, grant them the ability to communicate, but they're non-voting. They're not members of the board, but they're allowed to communicate with us during that meeting. I think that solves a lot of problems if that's how we want to do it.
Well, they can already do that no matter what we do.
Right.
Well, and that's just what we're clarifying, right? So we can make sure they have a voice. I guess that is the distinguishing factor then is whether or not they would be able to vote. So.
Well, I think you had, this is Ram. So I think you had a couple items that got brought up. Is that Jared's correct? We need more technical, expertise when we do the code review. That was one item. The other item is how do we get the suppliers in here involved, whether it's through outreach, or do we call them, or do we allow a couple suppliers to be on the board? That way they're out there actively talking to each other as well.
This is Mike Wanzer.
I think we should still amend it.
I think most of the wholesale suppliers belong to a national association, and probably an outreach to them would get somebody on it.
Well, with respect to the code adoption, the internal discussion we're having here at the city, it does include having special committees set up for each respective code. I don't, and I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to play out, but I personally didn't envision those specific committees to necessarily be a part of this board. And I'm just speaking out loud here, asking for some feedback too.
On that one, that's tricky. So you're going to get input from everybody else on the building code, or do you want to make somebody from each subject area here on the board, because everybody's kind of broken up in their own fields, make them the chair for a subcommittee for that code section or that book?
Well,
is that what you're leaning towards?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm leaning any which direction. I just wasn't sure quite how that was going to interface, because the community as a whole is much more than just this board, and we of course have to bring in all the stakeholders, whether they're part of this board or the homeowners association, or if they're just a citizen on the street somewhere who owns a home and they have a concern. That's part of what I'm talking about, the outreach and the discussion when we go into the consideration of what we will have for amendments, or that would include additions or deletions to the code.
Mr. Fry.
Don't they already, they can come public comment if they want to speak. The other people that you want them to have a voice, we're the representative board of the community.
Yes, and
they can come speak anytime they want.
Well, they can come speak anytime they want, that's true. At the same time, we want to be able to give them a structured time frame to submit their comments, or also be involved if they would like to whatever degree that is. Well, we haven't made a decision on this. I'm just saying we've. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look, that's kind of the outreach strategy for the ICC codes
Right.
adoption, and so, yeah, this board, of course, this board would be tied into that, but I don't know if that affects the membership.
Mr. Fry, this is Jared Murtis.
Yes.
Been through this code cycle before, our adoptions before, and what you're saying is the proper path, because it goes back to the way we were structured before with the individual boards being their discipline only. And we had supply vendors on there. The code adoption cycle was it was already set up pretty easily, because we were able to review, like, let's say, the electrical code, but we had supply houses there, and some of the discussions were that manufacturers, like, we actually had some electrical product that just the industry wasn't ready to supply, and what that allowed us is to be able to affect when we made a new code in effect. Like, you may, at the building officials, say, hey, you know what? We need to wait another 6 more months so we have adequate supply, so we don't have people that are installing things that are non-compliant. And so I think it makes sense to have at least some point, the city would review the codes. You would look at it, present us with your observations of it. I think that and then there should be some work sessions that the public is allowed to participate in, where people that are skilled in those trades can dialogue back and forth and make it a real quick, like, there's 2 sessions or something where we're going to introduce it, talk back and forth, outreach from some people, and move on to it. So I think that there is a need for some of that as you move forward. You can either have whole new committees. I have no problem participating in stuff in my discipline in whatever sub manner is required, but I think it does make sense to do that.
Agreed.
So, Ram, I think so. The only thing that we're at here on the membership is just allowing the ability to a supplier being able to be on here as an option. That's just an option, and then leaving it as is. And then if we need to have special people, then we reach out to them as needed, depending on the topic.
Gotcha. My recommendation is to add the ability for, like I said, electrical contractor to either be electrical contractor or supplier. And same for plumber, and same with HVAC. Those are the only recommendations I'm making to the membership.
We need to retain the master position, though. That's very important that we have a master in these departments. We don't want a supplier to bump off a master, in my opinion. I think it needs to be in addition to a master.
I agree. Can't we just add another position, period?
I mean, so what you have right now, so you got master electrician or electrical contractor.
I know what the classes are, but go ahead.
So we need to say 1 member to be master electrician and 1 member to be either electrical contractor or supplier, all the way through for plumbing and for HVAC.
Want a master in each discipline, and then be able to have a supplier that's just generic, I think. And then you could determine what part of the industry that supplier is from. And then if we need a special supplier, it will be on an as needed basis.
Oh, so you're trying to pull, you want to make one master electrician, 1 master plumber, 1 HVAC technician, and then allow the ability for 3 suppliers from either electrical, plumbing, or HVAC.
It either would be 1 generic supplier that we would determine who is the best for the cycle that we're in to be part of the board. Instead of having 3, you could have 1 or 3. I mean, but you could just say 1 that is more general, and then we invite other people as needed that wouldn't affect the membership. That's an option without us getting too complicated.
I think that already got complicated enough. Oh, let's just leave it the way it is, and then we just invite people as needed.
That's easy.
Yep.
Yep.
That's the easiest.
All right then. So we are going to close the discussion on item number 6.
I believe there needs to be an action to approve the amendment.
This is Jared Murtis. I make a motion to approve the amendment to the board makeup as currently written.
This is Paul Cervantes, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Can you scroll back up to the agenda?
Yes, next is the deputy building official report.
Okay, hi, good afternoon all. Last time we met, there was a couple different things that I brought up, and one of those things was all of the complaints that the city has been receiving regarding drainage, in particular infill lots. This also applies to all new construction, but in particular it's infill lots. And I'm pleased to announce that we have developed, it was already in play, but we finished developing informational bulletin number 8. Informational bulletin number 8 is specific to infill lots. And when we get out of this meeting, I can forward that to each of the board members for your review. And we're looking to implement that informational bulletin and the drainage requirements starting March 1st. And then following that, and this is just tentative schedule, following that, another 30 days or 60 days after with a general non-engineered drainage plan to accompany all plan reviews for new construction and additions. And then we're going to also be inspecting to that in the field. Of course, you guys haven't seen the informational bulletin yet, or maybe you have, but I want to give a little bit of time here for anybody to respond to that, of course, without having seen it yet. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to discuss, which we've already gotten into a little bit, was the code adoption cycle, and just trying to gain some clarity on how we're going to set up our committees and discuss the code adoption and education and so on and so forth. I do have Gene DeLauro, the previous building official. I do have his copies of his previous cycle and how he did his outreach. We're not going to do that exactly the same way this time, especially since the board is now just one board, and it's a different situation. So we're going to kind of I think we're going to have a few meetings, both internally and externally, to develop, I think, a clear process on how we're going to move forward on that. But we do need to begin that soon because there's a lot of material to cover. And if we plan to adopt it in 2022, it's just everybody's busy. And so, time just seems to go fast. So we intend to start moving on those committees soon. I don't have a time frame yet, but I just want to put that out there so you guys can respond. Okay, and I think that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Item number 8. Do we have any future agenda items from the committee?
Can I say something? I know I'm out of order, but can I back up for a second? Because there was something that we approved earlier in the annual report to City Council, number 4, which was already approved. So there's 2 items on here. One of the items, it says consolidate foundation certificate letter and pre-form survey letter. And I'm wondering, perhaps now's not the time, but I'm wondering if we can flesh that out a little bit.
This is Ram. We're going to reopen item number 5. So you're talking about item number, I guess, number 4 in there?
Yes.
Okay. What would you like to discuss about it?
Well, I just want to make sure that, number 1, that I'm understanding what is written there. So at the closing documents for the projects, we are getting a foundation certificate letter from the engineer. And sometimes we're also getting a form survey on that project as well. Are you proposing that you want to try to combine those 2 items into one?
The answer is yes. I'm proposing that we do a format on the paper where you have the pre-inspection for the form, and then at the very end, you still have a foundation certificate. The first one is just a signature block for the engineer, architect or surveyor. In the very end, he's got to sign it, ultimately, also the foundation certificate.
Does this stem from that case where the house was too low or the slab was too low that we did when we first started months ago? To try to prevent that?
That would have been the residential property by the Masagashi, right?
Yes, sir.
Wasn't the discussion how it's not very often done, and that this was kind of the idea was to get it up front, so we didn't have those houses that are.
Yeah, so they brought that up. So the residential properties don't require, I guess, a pre-survey letter. So there's one way to do it where we don't have more paperwork is we make the foundation certificate and the pre-form survey all in one, where the top part is for your pre-form survey, and then they still got to approve the foundation at the end of that, same letter.
I'd like to ask, because I'm not the very brightest guy, what exactly is a pre-form survey? What does that entail?
That entails that whoever is going to be certifying the property, that the foundation is X amount above, the curb, X amount above the roadway, that it's meeting the floodplain, whether it's, 12 inches above the requirement, whether it's an A zone or V zone. Those requirements are tied to the foundation at the same time. They all commingle with each other, and it'd be nice if we get it all on one document.
Okay, so this is Luke here, and my question then is that the pre-form survey letter, as we're referring to it, that sounds like an elevation certification. When I think of a form survey, I'm thinking of showing that the foundation or the building was placed in the correct location on the lot. With respect to the building lines and the property lines and any easements.
Okay, then you're asking for a setback requirement, whether it's in the setback, whether it's in the right horizontal dimension. If you go back, the pre-form survey was, I guess, in your perspective, you're looking at the setbacks, but in your floodplain manager's perspective, they're looking for vertical, requirements.
Yeah, they are. So that's what I'm saying right now. I'm just trying to clarify exactly what this statement is saying. So you're saying that the engineer would certify the foundation, which they're already doing, and do the elevation certificate, but it'd be one form, but it would not include a location on property or form survey kind of aspect. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, we can make it both. I mean, we make it all three if you want.
Well, we can at least make it so that the option would be there on the paperwork, right, to say what they're certifying, I guess. Because you're trying to reduce the amount of paperwork that you have to fill out, is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
I thought it was to reduce the chance of the survey and then the actual end product being different.
No, absolutely. That's what I want. I want the end product to be exactly what the plan show.
I think before you got here, though, we did a case back when the board first got together. The house was too low, and there was some discrepancy in what was submitted and what was done. And I think the idea was to tie that together.
Okay.
Right. That one was a
Is that right?
vertical issue. Yes, it was a vertical issue for the elevation being too low. But, you know, at that point, you know, on residential properties, the city does the setback inspections, and the engineer, you know, or whoever's going to sign off on the floodplain does the vertical requirement.
We are, yeah, that's true. More than ever, we're getting form surveys from engineers because we have DR Horton who's building here now, and they do a form survey at every single project. So we don't, for those projects, we don't even do a layout setback inspection. We just receive the form survey from them, and we status the inspection as approved if it matches the site plan that was proposed.
Okay. So, like I said, it's just a goal for us to be able to consolidate that form over the next year, hopefully.
Okay. Okay, second thing then is the determination on how to implement IBC Chapter 17, which is special inspections. And Ram, you and I have talked a little bit about this before, but I guess the question I have just to the board is, what was the previous culture here? Was there any type of special inspections happening at all, or just for specific items, or, you know, was Chapter 17 just ignored or struck from the code, or how did all that happen, I guess? I find it odd we don't have special inspections.
Well, it was being ignored only because on the projects, the windstorm engineer already has to meet the building code requirements, which is Section 17. So you guys missed out.
Well, so Chapter 17 has so much more than just, you know, requirements that relate to windstorm. And there's so many different things in there. So I guess just to help me understand, so there was no special inspections happening at all?
Well, I thought they were special inspecting shower drain pans, those.
No, that's not one of the special inspections that's listed in Chapter 17.
So you're to the answer.
Mr. Fry, this is Jared Murtis. To be honest with you, I am ignorant to all of the requirements of Chapter 17, so I'm a little unsure as to what its scope is. I know we've had special inspections for electrical systems like reouts when places have been vacant for a while and other things, but I'm not real sure to the extent of the scope of Chapter 17.
Okay, so the scope relates to steel construction.
Okay.
Concrete construction, sprayed fireproof materials, the structural observations, and of course, Chapter 1 still gives the building official the ability to require special inspections for any unique or different type of system that's being installed, whether it's electrical, plumbing, mechanical. That's just less. It's not used as often, but it also discusses fabricated items and what approved agencies are, and how to get those special inspections accomplished, because that's typically beyond the scope of what a municipal inspector can accomplish. Okay, so that's kind of the background to it.
Okay, so let me tell you what I think about that. I think since there's just different disciplines being affected here. So I think on the structural side, relying on the windstorm certifier for attachments and stuff is part of that. The energy code part of it is being done by our licensing program. So I'm one of the providers for I do mostly commercial clients only for energy compliance review and things of that nature. And then we do special inspections and other areas. So I think we're doing some of those things by some of those mechanisms. So I think it would be a dialogue as to you looking at them and determining where you think we might be deficient, I guess, or areas of concern, and then where how we've addressed it in the past, and if we need to do more in an area, we can discuss how and what, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a couple more areas: waterproofing and fire protection.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Okay, well, that's all I had for number 4 under item 5. Thank you.
Okay. So it looks like I skipped over public comments. I'm going to go ahead and item number 2. I'm going to open up the public comments.
We have not received any public comment forms for any items on the agenda.
We have none, or we have some?
We have none.
Okay. I'm going to close out item number 2, public comment. Okay, so for future agenda items, we are going to go ahead and talk more about Chapter 17 regarding basically structural, soil, concrete, energy, fire protection, and waterproofing. Okay.
All right.
If I don't have any other items, do I have a motion? Yes, sir.
Sorry, sir. This is Paul Cervantes Electric. Can I bring up, I guess, new business?
Yes, we can add a new agenda item for the future.
Yes, sir. Back when I was, I hate to say it, back when I was on the electrical board, we had a major problem with 2 issues. One, we had master electricians pulling permits for just anybody, and 2, we had unlicensed individuals for job sites. The city was striking down, and we had very basic meetings set up for the next couple of months, and we actually had to do one special meeting. But after that, my board got dissolved. Well, the issue's been brought up again. Us local guys are getting carded, which me personally, I don't mind because I have my journeymen on the job site. But the problem is we got these big contractors, corporations coming in from Houston. They're bringing in 15 guys, 16 guys working on a job site. And my thing is, why is the local guys in compliance with the ratio of 3-to-1, which I mean, 3 helpers for 1 journeyman, but these local guys are coming, these out-of-time guys are coming in working on a house with, 15, 16 guys, but nobody's carding them like us local guys.
So the future agenda item is going to be how do we determine or how do we implement the requirements from the electrical board for a 3-to-1 ratio for your master versus journeyman on the future job site then?
Correct. Like me personally, I'm allowed to carry 6 licensed journeymen under my license, and my journeymans are allowed to carry 3 helpers under them. So I take pride in the fact that I have, 5 licensed journeymen on the job site with my helpers. But my guys are on the field and they see more than me. They're calling me, hey, Paul, it's not fair that we're getting carded. But yeah, we got this big contractor from Houston because he's working for another big builder. They're not getting carded and they're not having to apply for the same rules that we are. And I don't think it's fair that us local guys are getting. I know some of my competitors are reaching out to me saying, hey, Paul, why is it that we're getting carded? But what about this contractor from Houston? He's not having to get carded and have journeymen at the job site like we are. I guess what they're complaining about is us local guys trying to follow the guidelines, the city ordinance, and the code book, but we got this big corporation just coming in, doing 3 houses at once with 15, 20 guys, but what's his ratio at? Who's the actual licensed journeyman at the job site?
Hey, Mike Wander here. Who does the carding? Who does the carding?
Back when I was an inspector, we could do it, and then now I think there's the electrical inspector still has the authority to do it unless they changed it.
Mr. Building Official, can the electrical inspector card a job site?
I don't know where we're at on that. I'll have to ask the question.
Can they, Mr. Bryce?
I don't see why they couldn't.
I
And
guess,
require enforcement.
well, that's going to be something that that Luke needs to go work it out with the electrical inspector. And then you can just follow up with us on the next meeting. But if you find information that you want to send off to the group, that'd be great too.
Yes, sir. Like I said, because I know the ratio was 3-1. I'm not too sure if they changed it or what the requirements are, but I know back when I was an electrical inspector and back when I was on electrical board, the ratio was 3-1.
Okay.
When you say 3-1, do you mean 3 helpers to every journeyman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We don't have that in the HVAC trade. We don't have masters or any of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, all of our stuff is pretty much
Yeah.
managed now by the state. So all these are pretty much state laws now. Because now that me, for example, for years I had just a Corpus license, but then I had to get the state license. Corpus was now honoring the state, and pretty much we try to follow. Oh, I'm sorry. Back when I was electrical board, we used to try to follow the state and the city ordinance.
Gotcha. Okay. So we got to put it on the agenda for the future.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. If we don't have any other, go ahead.
I do, Ram. Mr. Fry, my business partner, Scott Streety, is the electrical arm of our business. And I know that Arc Flash studies and labeling of electrical gear from a safety perspective is become more of a newer code requirement. And he's been educating me on the topic. And he's under the impression that there's a lot of newer buildings and things that may not be compliant, and had some concern about that. So I think at some point, I think it would be good for you to look into the Arc Flash world, and if we need to invite Scott Streety to one of the meetings and he can voice his concern on the research he's done. I think that there is a need in the electrical side to understand what code requirements are, just because it's a safety concern.
Okay, very good.
And when you're ready to do that, I just would like to have a meeting and have him be with me during the meeting, and we could allow him to communicate, just like we were discussing with vendors or somebody else. I would just want the board to let me know when's a good time to do that, and I'll make sure he is made available.
So you want to invite him to the next meeting, or you want to have that meeting outside of these scheduled meetings?
Whenever whenever you're up on the topic and you're available for discussion, it could be outside of this meeting or during the meeting. I just think that Arc Flash needs to be discussed and determine how we are making sure from the city's perspective that projects are compliant, that there is somebody that is performing the function and doing that. We just need to have a mechanism similar to like the special inspections, and it's just to understand what the code requirements are and are we enforcing it, and how does it go into inspection or not, and permitting and things of that nature. So it could be in one of these meetings or in a separate one. Just when you have time, I think it's something that we need to do.
I think there would be benefit to having him come to the next meeting if we can get it on future business, because
Yeah.
I think everybody would stand to benefit to learn something about it.
Yeah, so would I.
second that.
Yeah, and I can make him available at the next meeting, and would love to do that.
Great idea, Jared. Let's do it.
All right.
All right. Wonderful. Do we have any other future agenda items?
When is our next meeting?
In
March. March. We know what day? Is it the third Thursday or something, or?
How does a March meeting put you on the fast track for codes?
March 18th.
You were
I'm
saying
sorry.
earlier that time was limited.
Well, it's just limited in the sense that this time just gets away from us. So, in the interim, I think by the next meeting, I think we should have something laid out to discuss, at least a tentative schedule for committees and who's going to chair those committees. Which, of course, if it's members of this board, that's fine. The subcommittees, excuse me, and just get something that we can really, get ready to discuss, so we can implement it and begin the process. But I need to visit with Mr. Raymond and Mr. Dice and of course, include them in the conversation. So, which I may even invite them to the next meeting if we're going to discuss at length. And I can send something out to the board members here before that meeting for review, which I think would make sense. What do y'all think about that?
Yes, sir. I think that's good.
Sounds good to me.
All right, wonderful. If this is finally no more, do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion, we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.